What's up, everyone? It's Alicia, too, joined by my co-host, Tori Kravitz, and we are your hosts of She's with the Band. Welcome back to another episode. These episodes have been kick-ass tour, and today is no different. I know usually we wait to announce the guest, even though it's in the title of every single episode, but today we're bringing on Debbie from Heriot, who I know you have a very intense connection with. You saw them live recently. I think they're such a kick-ass group. She's lovely, and so it's going to be a really, really fun episode today.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how I ended up discovering them as well. My partner, who the person I am dating, had toured with Heriot last winter, and he was just like, "They're so amazing, Deb. Her screams are incredible." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure they're great. Like anyone you bring on tour is great." And I like hate to say that I was a little bit dismissive at first, and then went and listened to them, and I was like, "Oh crap, I need to listen to him a little more often."
Yeah.
And they're so cool, and I really like that there's just these ebbs and flows where Heriot, like where Deb just sounds almost like Chelsea Wolfe and so ethereal and almost witchy, and then it just hits you in the
Boom.
face with the craziest heavy sound. And so I did go to see them on their headlining tour here in the UK, and couldn't believe how incredible they sounded live. I feel like their recordings don't even do them justice. So safe to say I am looking forward to being able to talk to her a bit more and dig into her brain.
Yeah, it was really cool because as Tor was out at this show, she texted me the morning after going, "We need to have them on the show. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. This is going to happen. She's coming on, and we're gonna crush it." And what was cool too
Dude,
is
yeah.
Deb ended up telling us that she's been listening to the pod and she couldn't wait to be on.
Yeah.
Whenever you have that mutual respect going into something like this, you always know the conversation's going to be fun because there's no worry. You already know what the people are all about. So yeah, I think this is going to be, as I said before, just a really great conversation. And just kind of speaking on what you said there, just in terms of how in your face their music can be and the juxtapositions and the ebbs and flows. There's a quote I love that Heriot put out, and it was, "Heriot isn't for the faint-hearted." And man, did they nail it with that one simple sentence. So with you,
Yeah.
before we bring Debbie on, I'd love to know, who are some of your all-time favorite heavy bands? I'm talking balls to the wall, bass melting heavy. Who is it?
Hmm. So at the moment, I mean, it changes because I'm just constantly listening to so
Of
much music.
course.
At the moment, I'm really on a Gojira kick, really into it. And I
Yes.
do also love Ginger, if we're wanting to talk about some female fronted badassery. You said that once not long ago, and I was like, badassery.
It's a good name,
Yes.
or a good word, right?
It is a good word. So yeah, Ginger and Gojira are the two that first come to my mind as just really heavy bands where it's the stuff I put on at the gym so I could lift my heaviest weights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about you?
That's such a good pick. For me, I'd probably have to go. It's interesting because although they're not my favorite heavy metal band of all time, I mean they're in my top three. But just speaking to the one that's heaviest in terms of where I kind of like to go, I'd go with System of a Down. I just think
Ooh.
that they're truly one of the greatest metal bands of all time, and the way that they're able to almost pull a Heriot where they'll do those crazy little ethereal breakdowns in between and then the high harmonies against the
Hmm.
crazy growls. They have the weirdest time changes and then the poetic lyrics that they deliver in such an aggressive way on their stance on politics. It's just, they're such an important band and they meant so much to me growing up. And I think I've said it before, but Serge looks a lot like my uncle, and it just all made sense listening to Sode as a kid. So they were the one that always had a place in my heart, and they forever will. And another gym band, like there's
Oh
no
yeah.
way if Cigarro's playing, I don't work out like a mad woman. So
So
yep.
good. You know what's weird? I don't know why like Pantera riffs are going off in my head right now. And I'm like,
Ah,
maybe that's another one to bring up, but I do love,
yeah, because they're like a groovy heavy, like they have,
yeah.
man, they have more grooves than a tire. They're so good.
I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah.
More grooves than a tire. I'm gonna throw that in a music review at some point.
I
Maybe heavy
stole that
conversation.
I literally stole that from my dad. So when I first started Ambi, I used to have all my family writing music reviews because we just loved music so much. And so my cousin would write them, my sister, and then my dad. And he once used that phrase, and I said, "How did you come up with that? That's genius." And he goes, "I used to be in a band. You think I can't write poetic things?" So it was so great.
Unreal. Your dad's a legend.
It really
Awesome.
is. Yep. Oh
Well,
man.
speaking of grooves, I think we're ready to chat with Deb a bit. What do you say? Should we bring her
Yeah,
on?
she's a groovy one. I think we bring her on and let's see where this convo goes.
And we are joined now by Deb from Heriot. How are you, Deb? How's it going today?
I'm so good, thank you. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Yeah, coming up on some, you just finished up a headlining tour not too long ago. More big shows coming up soon. As we're recording this, Slam Junk's literally right around the corner. So how have things been in like the live music world? I suppose you're in that performing headspace right now.
Yeah, crazy. Just so much going on, so many mental, lovely things happening for Heriot in the land of Heriot right now. Yeah, we just came back from the headline shows, which were wicked. Really, really good turnout. It was so nice to be able to do those shows because we've never done headline shows before. We've only ever done one, so it was crazy to go and do a tour. So it was really lovely. And then earlier on in the year, we went out to Europe with Rolo Tomasi, and there were probably shows after that. But my head is a sieve and it's the end of the day, so I can't remember what they were, but I'm sure there were some. And now I've said that, there were probably really big shows. And oh my God, we played with Diotis Murder. That's what it was. I'm sorry.
That's so good.
I shouldn't have forgot that. That was wicked.
What I thought was, sorry, what? Did we all just try to go at once?
We all three of us were like, it's our turn. No, go ahead.
Well, no, Deb, I saw you had tweeted, and it was just so funny to me because I really related, where you had said, I don't get burnt out because I have no time to get burnt out. And I was like, yeah, I feel that, dude.
There is no time.
Story
there is
of
no
my
time.
life.
If I let the ball slip now, I'm gone. I'm off. So I can't let that happen.
Yep. It's just got to keep coasting.
Yeah. Hope for the best.
That can be difficult sometimes, because with us, all three of us are so go, go, go. As soon as one project's done, the next one comes up. And it's like, it's very hard to take that break, because I'm always worried about missing an opportunity or something passing me by. And I can tell you're very much in that same mindset, which is amazing to have, that hustle and that drive. But it does sometimes get to the point where you need to rest. You feel so burnt out. So how do you keep yourself in that go, go, go mode? Like, do you have any kind of secret tips or tricks that maybe Tor and I could pull from? Because I know for me, it's lots of tea. And then finally, when the night hits, melatonin, baby.
Oh, really? My housemate uses that, and I have it like when I'm super ill. And he'll be like, I'll go and get it. But ginger and lemon tea, I think, is the only like thing that I go for where I'm like, okay, I know that this will probably help. I had some Mikuna or Mancuna honey today in it because I'm quite ill at the moment. Which is sick before Heavy Music Awards and Slam Dunk. But I'm hoping that ginger and lemon will get me through. I hope that it will for you guys too, honestly. And broccoli. Whenever I feel like I've rubbish for too long, I'm like, I need some greens in me. Broccoli.
Really? Broccoli, I love that.
And I'm a real menace for smoothies. Like, I'd say that's probably the only good habit that I've ever managed to uphold in my life, is every morning I'll do myself a smoothie, fresh smoothie, and I have like chia seeds and flax seeds and like this green potiony rubbish stuff in it, and I tell myself that that's doing me good, and vitamins. I just try and pour everything into me because I don't have time to fix it.
Yeah, it's a one and done, right? You're getting everything. You're getting your fiber, your greens, your vitamins. You're ready to go. You don't even need to think about health for the rest of the day.
I've had 2 today. I've had 2 smoothies today. I really need to double up on the goodness. One of them's got to help. I'm doubling up.
You know what? I feel like that really sums it up. It's like everything that I think is healthy, we're just going to put it all in one thing. And then one of them has to work.
Yeah, that's my thinking as well. I'm so glad that other people do this as well.
I feel you, dude. I feel you. I was thinking when you were talking about the headlining tour, the fact that you've also supported so many big bands. I mean, man, you've had a busy, busy year. And I must think, like, having been in the room for one of those headlining shows, the energy was so insane. And what is that like for you on stage when you're doing a headliner versus like when you're doing that supporting act? I imagine, is the mindset different for you of how you approach the show and how it feels when you're in it?
I think like obviously this is like a really new experience because it's only like just happened and we've only just had this like experience to see what a headline show would really look like for us. I think I feel a little bit more confident to like in playing, just because I guess common sense would make me think that they do like it at least. Like, you bought the ticket, hun, so unless you're really reckless with the money, I hope that you do like it. You know,
Yeah,
it makes me feel better. I think you just feel a little bit more confident in what you're doing because you're aware that there definitely are people who like your band, whereas sometimes you can, especially when you're playing with bands who maybe don't necessarily sound exactly like you, I can feel a little bit apprehensive, like at the start of like, oh, how are we going to go down with these guys? But yeah, I think I feel a little bit more confident. We added like a couple of like more samples that we've for like mosh calls and stuff like that, to be honest, that we feel as though like, well, if it's ever going to happen, you'd hope that it would happen at a headline show if we couldn't get away with a sample as a mosh call. So I'd say that was something that we did differently.
Oh, it is cool to see how your confidence, Tori, I love it. We're literally, I got to be honest with you, Deb, like we've been doing these conversations for a while now with this show. We're coming up on like 6 months in real time. And you're one of the most delightful guests that we've had. Like everyone's been incredible, but I can just tell from the way that Tori and I are like jumping to get in.
I'm really excited to talk to you, dude. We're just like, I have something to say.
No, oh, you guys are very, very lovely to me. Thank you. I'm also very excited to talk to you, which is why I keep putting in. I'm really sorry.
No, I feel like those are the best conversations where people do talk over one another, because it just means that everyone has something to say and we're all excited about it. So no complaints whatsoever. But what I was going to say is it's really cool just to see the confidence build over time, because I know in the past you have talked about anxiety before a show and while setting up on stage and everyone kind of watching, and you've seen people looking at you thinking, how is she going to deliver something heavy? And then you shove it in their face as you play this incredibly intense, unique brand of metal. So how much does that still fire you up? And what are your thoughts on how people still kind of perceive women in that light, like yourself in that situation I just mentioned, just women in heavier bands looking at you thinking, nah, they can't, and then you just melting their faces off?
I'm not sure if I do always melt people's faces, to be honest, but I think if I can try and tell myself that like during the set and just try and like, I don't know, sometimes it feels as though like it's this weird authentic and yet still like character kind of vibe. Like I don't feel like how maybe I'm on stage is, well, it's not how I would talk to anybody off stage. Oh my god, everybody would probably hate me if I like acted in the same way on stage, off stage as well as on stage. But I feel like it is sometimes when I get a bit worried about that kind of stuff, I do have to just think, wow, like it's happening now, and you can either like let on or you can just like try and act like completely the opposite. And like I think I'm really I'm a real like bugger. Can't think of another word. I don't know why I can't think of another word other than bugger. I'm sorry, I'm not 50. But like I'm really a stickler for like punishing myself all the time. Like I think sometimes I make things out to be far worse than what they actually are in the moment. And luckily this headline tour, I was very much like that at the start of it, and then as it went on, I just kind of learnt to let go over the little things a little bit more, like just give myself a break a bit more, because I do drive myself insane and I need to not do that, otherwise I you know, like what's the point in doing all of this like wicked stuff? And one of my friends is like yeah, I think you need to just allow yourself to make like mistakes. It's not going to not happen.
We're human. Soak in the moments and realize the badassery of what you're actually doing in that time, right?
Try to.
Yeah.
Try to.
It really does blow my mind though that you have those feelings of self-doubt or being so hard on yourself, because it's like interesting to get in someone else's mind, because I know when I saw you when we first spoke outside, you were so nice, and then you got on stage and I was like, how did such a nice girl do that? It was like such a juxtaposition, and it was so impressive to me. I was there with my partner, and I kid you not, after the show we looked at each other, we were like, how can a band sound that heavy? Like, emphasis on that heavy. It was you actually melted my face off. So we have a testimonial now. And not
Thank
to
you
geek
so
out
much
a little,
for coming out.
dude, of course. But is it true that you use a heavy metal pedal as well? Is that one of your little sneaky tricks? Because that very much defined the black metal and shoegaze world. So very cool that you do use that. But I do want to know a little more about how you define heavy as a descriptor, and what your approach is to making your music heavy. Like, to you, is it more of a sound or a feeling, or is it both? Like, it's such a complicated thing, isn't it?
I think, like, and I have to be careful not to seem maybe too airy-fairy in like saying this, because nobody wants to listen to somebody who's just being really pedantic about their own band. But like, I think Heriot tries to make like a mood rather than like everything. Like, I guess like tonally with like the guitars and the vocals, we are a heavy band, but I think we try and just make the atmosphere heavy, rather than constantly just like doing like noise tunes or thrash tunes or like tunes with a million breakdowns in. I think there's maybe like a creepy element to Heriot with like some of the atmospheric bits, the cleaner kind of bits, and I'd like to think that those bits can allow for like the heavier bits to feel a little bit heavier, because there's like, hopefully it comes across that there's different dynamics. So I think that's like our attitude towards being heavy, is just like trying to set a mood and a tone. And like in some of the newest stuff that we're writing, I think that's definitely following the same path as well, of like not always feeling as though because you're a heavy band you have to write like a breakdown heavy song every time, and like trying to go a little bit further with like being a heavy band can mean lots of different things.
Such a good point though, because I really did notice that listening to your music, how there are those ebbs and flows, and those moments where you sing and it's so ethereal and almost dreamlike, but like still a little dark and gloomy in a way, and then it just hits you. And when it hits, it does feel that much more impactful than just a full breakdown for an entire song, isn't it? So
it's very clever. It's such cool songwriting that you're letting things breathe, so then those heavier moments are even more impactful. I loved it the first time I heard it. I just thought it was so clever.
Oh, thank you. I feel as though it would just maybe get a little bit like tedious for us, and we'd probably run out of steam like way quicker if we would like only writing breakdowns and only writing like fast riffs or like noise industrial stuff underneath. Like, I feel as though it needs a little bit of air, and I feel like I've got this thing about music at the minute of like how bands can go in different directions as well. I think just because lots of bands are trying to do more than just like one genre within their music, and I think that's something that keeps it fresh for like listeners and people in bands, so you just don't feel like it's all oversaturated.
Yeah, so is that really what your mindset is going into this new music? Because I know we've heard Demir, which is the newest single that's out now. So as you continue to work on the new stuff, is it going to get a little more experimental and try new things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there's so much in like our brains about how we like different corners of Heriot and how we can like push that even beyond like this album, and like what will the album after that maybe look like, even though this album isn't out yet. But like I think it would be a real shame to just allow ourselves to do one thing. Like, I don't want to be the ABC of like, oh, Heriot are heavy and then they sometimes do clean singing. Like that feels to me like it could very quickly run out of steam and very quickly become predictable. So I'd like to keep try and make interesting versions of heavy music, and just see how many like different variations we can get with that, really.
I think what's kind of cool about that as well, just speaking to variations, is since you've been enjoying live music from such a young age. I read that your first concert was when you were 4. Your dad introduced you to tons of live shows at such an early age with like bands like Metallica, Judas Priest. You grew up listening to a lot of different genres within this genre. So it's very neat knowing that you have so much to take away from. But just also, I guess, speaking to those bands and some that you saw growing up, I'd love to dive into just some of those super heavy shows you remember going to at a younger age. Because I know for me, like the first bands that I saw live that my dad took me to, my first show ever was Spice Girls when I was 3, which I know I've mentioned on this show before.
Amazing. I feel like I hadn't heard you say that before on the show.
Yeah, I was on Tuesday the Band, we kind of talked about first gigs, but I feel like the first real one I went to was when I was 8, and my dad took me to see Taking Back Sunday in the Used, which for me was like my emo heart just got to sing. So what were some of those kind of first gigs for you?
I think there's like a few that definitely stand out, and like I'm so predictable, and I can't believe I get them into like every conversation ever, but like the first time I saw, well, the second time I saw Lamb of God outside of a festival, it was at the Wolfram Hall, and it was kind of like an underplay show for them, or like I think it was a side show to accompany Bloodstock. So it was a smaller venue than what they'd like normally do. And Silosis was supporting, and like I'd never heard of Silosis. And obviously Josh Middleton was like ripping on vocals, but also insane guitarist. And I was kind of new to like different guitar techniques and stuff like that as well, so I just found it mad to watch him like do like both at the same time. And then I really felt like in that moment of watching them, like I was at the barrier, and it felt like everybody in the crowd was just having a great time, and everybody was enjoying it like simultaneously. Everyone was on the same vibe. And I think that was like probably like I think that was probably the first like thrash show that I've been to, excluding maybe like Cancervats, if you want to put them in the same kind of category. But I thought that was wicked, and they played like Contractor and all these songs because it was like an intimate show that I didn't think that they'd play, and it was wicked. And then oh god, yeah, that show was wicked. So many shows, so many shows, especially.
Was that
like,
kind of a frequent thing with your dad? Just him saying, "Hey, we're going out. It's Friday. We're about to go to this gig. Come on."
My dad didn't go to that one actually. Unfortunately,
oh,
my dad
really?
didn't
Okay.
go to that. Yeah, that was me and my friend Jodie. We were in school, and we went. Like my dad did tell me about it though. Like he was like, "Lamb of God are playing it."
So still we can give some props to your father.
Yeah. And I was like, "What? Oh my God!" And he was like, "It's gonna sell out. Like, do you want to go?" And I was like, "Yes, oh my God, yes, please." But yeah, that was wicked. And like, oh, so many bands. Like Linkin Park at Download was a really good one as well. Like, just for these maybe weren't like my first shows, but like impactful shows kind of thing. Like when Linkin Park played Hybrid Theory in full at Download, whatever year that was great, and I was with my dad for that, and we were definitely both on the same vibe. Like, and again, it felt like everybody was just like absolutely loving it, and we were really far back as well. And I think sometimes like when you are a bit far back, you don't get the same atmosphere, but that show was like, however far back you would have gone from like the front row, I'm sure that everybody was just like having the best time. So yeah, those two shows were really, really good.
I think those are amazing picks to think right there. I mean, two of the most, I would say, pivotal bands of like our generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that I'll probably think of other ones when I've come off this call, but it seems to happen to me like all the time when I was like from the ages of like 13 to like 18, like going to shows. It felt like every show that I went to was this huge event, and sometimes I miss that now. Like you get a bit spoilt sometimes, and it really frustrates me. Like if I was going to a show, I'd like write it down in like my school planner, like 3 days
Me
until
too.
cancer bats, then like
Yes,
2
I did the
days
same thing.
until
We did the
and, like,
same thing.
yeah. And I really like sometimes now I'm like, oh God, I forgot I'm seeing XYZ on Tuesday. Oh, what am I gonna do about tea before the show? And I'm like, oh my God, like
I
14-year-old
know.
me would be dying about this. Like, Deb, you are such a knob. Like, you should be so much more grateful about this.
It is
But
so funny that you mentioned being worried about dinner before the show, because that is so me, and it's embarrassing but true. Like I appreciate you
awful.
admitting it.
It's literally as important as the concert. When I used to do all of the interviews around Toronto, like all the hometown interviews, bands would come through and I'd think, okay, they're playing at, this spot. So that means I know I'm getting shawarma that night. Or, oh no, there's that great pizza joint around the corner. Like I would
Yes.
always coincide the venue with food, and I'd be just as hyped about the interview to the meal I'd have after to the show I knew I was going to love. Like it's such a important part of the overall experience. And I think it's so cute that you two are on that same wavelength.
It's got different perks now, isn't it?
Fully. But I love hearing these stories about these shows that you went to when you were younger and how impactful they were in your musical journey. And as I was, doing my little deep dive research on Heriot prior to this, I realized I couldn't really find your origin story of how you went from being this fan of metal to becoming a musician and having your own band. So, I mean, how did your journey in music begin, and how did you learn to just become this commanding performer that you are now? Because I just think you're mind blowing.
Oh, thank you so much, mate. I feel as though like I'm like very, very, very lucky that my like mum and dad were into music. Like my dad was really, well, he still is, like he's still really into music, and I'm from Birmingham, and he was around like during the kind of like upsurge of metal and Sabbath and stuff like that, and he was very much like in that scene, and he did lights for bands, kind of like a local level kind of thing, but they were playing with bands that were like influential and stuff like that, because it was all kind of starting out. But I'd always been around metal and like hard rock and stuff like that, so it was always like this thing in my head that I had, like, without sounding pretentious, like I had an understanding of it, like I had a pretty good like awareness of it. And then I feel like it just grew and grew and grew. I'd wanted to play guitars, and then guitar, and I'd be like, well, I'm not sure if I actually do. Oh, I do. I think I want to play guitar. Oh no, I don't, kind of thing. And then I had a guitar when I was 10. Didn't really pick it up properly until I was 14, but I could like physically play it, kind of thing, but I wasn't like absorbed by it or anything like that. But then I guess this is a long way to say it, but my dad took me to Download in 2011, and I was 13, and I had like, it was literally just on the morning like, oh, we're going to Download today, and I didn't know anything about it. And then when we went, the first band I ever saw at festival was Skunk Anansie. And then we saw like Twisted Sister and Alice Cooper, and obviously I had awareness of like those bands, but I'd never been in that atmosphere before, so all those songs that I'd heard as a kid, and then like hearing them like live, and then in that atmosphere, I swear to you, in that moment, like everything backdates to like that like singular day.
Wow.
It was like I can remember everything before we went to Download, and then everything after was completely different, because then I was obsessed, like that was wicked, and I was looking at the lineup, and like, even though it had passed, but like I was looking at the lineup and like listening to all these bands, and I'd realized like Pendulum had played, and I hadn't seen Pendulum, but we'd seen Avenged Sevenfold, and I'd liked them, and then I went into their kind of like dove into that more, and then I was like, oh well, actually, like I do play guitar, so like maybe I could learn some of these songs, like, since I really like I seem to be really into this music. And then from there it was like absolutely obsessed with music. And then I started watching band documentaries, and then had it in my head that I wanted to join a band. Went on joinmyband.com, literally joined a band like the next day. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, like I've been in bands since I was 14, but not gigging bands until I was 17, 18, like college kind of time. But yeah, it's always like I genuinely feel as though I can't remember a time before all of this now. Like I very much feel so strongly that like this is the only thing that I want to do, and I can't imagine anything like being taken out of this environment. I don't think that could ever happen to me. But yeah, I guess that's like how I got into music, and from there I left the secondary school that I was at to go to a college that like specialized in performing arts, so that I could try and meet other people to join a band with. That it didn't quite, like, I was only the only person there into metal, so it didn't quite work out. But I did start playing like for singers and like accompanying them at shows, and I was super anxious about that. Like, I was a really bad performer because but I wasn't playing metal. And then when I did join my first band and I did like play a metal show, I couldn't believe like the difference. It was like something took over me. Like, honestly, I felt like I wasn't in control. But then I knew like, okay, this is what you've like worked up to, like, to kind of get to this point. So yeah, wow. That's a long-winded way to say it, sorry.
And now here you are. It's led you to your own gigging band. So well done, I suppose, yeah.
No, that's such an incredible thing to think about. That one show had such a big impact on everything. Because I know for Tori and I, we both have those experiences. It's that one gig, and then you think, holy shit, this is live music. This is what it's about. I need to be out at shows every single night, every single week. It's a bug you can't shake. And now years later, it's still something we can't shake. And I'm so glad that our families were able to instill that in us, because I know it was very much like Tori's mom went to gigs with her, my parents did with me, and it's really nice hearing you had that same bond. So have your parents been able to come out to any of the Heriot gigs? What are their thoughts on seeing you command the stage and going from that kid going to these gigs to being the one performing?
They do come out to shows. They're lovely. They, in the Birmingham show that we did, they came out, and it was also the 30th wedding anniversary, so we like shouted that out, and that was lovely, and that felt very like wholesome that they were there watching us on that day, kind of thing. They do come out, and they're like super amazing about everything. It's a bit too heavy for them, I will say that. Like, they're not really. My dad likes the guitar tones. My mum calls me clean singing wailing, and she's like, I like the wailing. And I'm like, why are you calling the clean singing the wailing? Like, please.
That's so good.
Please. It's hard out here, please, Mum. But yeah, she likes the wailing, which is supposed to be not wailing, but yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That's so funny.
But I mean, speaking of all these gigs that you've played, you touched on it kind of briefly, but I really got to emphasize the fact that you've played with Lamb of God, Rollo Tomasi, Boston Manor, Zeal and Ardor. I mean, all of which have such long-standing, successful careers and are great at their craft. So how have these experiences helped you? Has it altered your approach or your viewpoint in a positive way as an artist, or taught you anything? Because, you know, when somebody has more experience, they obviously have made certain mistakes that they feel like, hey, don't do this or do this, you know, things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think every tour that we go on, you meet like so many different people, and often like different kind of, not different genres, but different like styles of music. Like Zeal and Ardor are really different to Boston Manor. Boston Manor are really different to Lamb of God. Rollo Tomasi are different to Lamb of God as well. Like, they're all different bands. And so like we're so lucky in that like everybody that we've toured with has been amazing, and we've like kept in contact with them and feel as though we're like genuinely friends, kind of thing. But like it's really nice being able to talk about like, how is your band doing, like what do you guys do about this, or like, you know. But I think Eva from Rollo was like amazing to tour with, because we've toured with Rollo twice now, once in the UK and once in Europe, and like I am so in awe of her, because she was really like one of the first like women to do it, and she really like held the flag and like just paved the way for like people like me to do it, and so many other people like me to do it. And like when she was kind of like sharing stories and we were talking about, you know, like how you're finding it and things like that, because you do have those kind of conversations like with other women in bands. I guess it just kind of comes up naturally. But I felt really just like protective over Eva, and like really like thankful for her. Like I just think she's incredible, and like I was so aware that if she hadn't have like had the courage like and the guts like to do what she did at the time she was, you know, first playing shows, and I like literally wouldn't be able to play in a band really, or like it's a lot easier for people like me to play in a band now. Like that was a really nice like
bonding experience
connection to have. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was really, really nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. And she's so fantastic. So
She's
goes hand
amazing.
in hand between the two of you, for sure. I'm just gonna keep gassing you up this whole interview. I think that's what's going on. I think I'm just gonna keep being like, you're great. I really like your band.
Next
So
time
funny.
you see me, you'll be like, oh my God, it's all gone to her head.
You're gonna be just strutting around. I'm not even gonna recognize you.
It's too funny.
And I'll see you this weekend too. So I'll be on the lookout.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's so clear that certain bands over time and as we grow, not only with age but experience, stick with us. And sometimes there are also songs that will follow us wherever we go, no matter how old we are, simply because it brings us back to amazing moments. So I'd love to know what you can tell us about the nostalgia that hits every time you randomly hear "Kiss from a Rose" by Seal.
Oh, so some of my in an older band that I played in, we used to have it on in like the car all the time, and my friend Rich does just the most amazing singing to "Kiss from a Rose," and it, you know how you kind of end up with these like songs with each other with stuff like that. That was definitely our song. Like it just makes me so happy because I can see us all like really laughing to that song, and like loads of different memories to "Kiss from a Rose." Like when it comes on in a serious context, I can't be in the room because I just think it's so funny. I forget that it is a serious song for some people.
Oh.
So yeah,
it was just
nice
a song. I kept noticing it being mentioned in different contexts, and I'm like, I need to understand the importance of this, because it would be metal song, metal song, metal song, Seal.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is a really good one.
So fun.
Yeah, it was always a pick me up as well, like if it was a long drive or something, we'd just stick Seal on.
Right.
I loved that you asked about that, by the way, Alicia. What a deep cut. So good. And something else I actually really wanted to ask you about, Deb, is I can't even really pinpoint it, but I feel like UK bands just have a totally different vibe and a different look than a lot of the bands in the US.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can look at a band and just kind of know, oh, they're from the UK. And so from your perspective, I feel like I can pinpoint that with Heriot as well. Do you think your surroundings and like the culture that you've been surrounded by in your life have played a role in the band now and how that sets you apart? Or do you think it's just kind of happened organically, you know? I mean, I'm not really sure, but I just was curious.
I think like with a lot of the bands that like are around at the moment in the UK, and like there's so many amazing bands. I think what some people don't realize is that like a lot of people in bands have been in bands for a long time, and we all kind of know each other because of that. Like even though it might seem as though you're like fresh on the scene, like there's a whole lot of like building you do before you can even publicly seem as though you've just stepped on the ladder, kind of thing. And I think a lot of people in bands have been grinding at it for years and years and years. And I think because of that, like when you see old faces that you might have played a show with in like, I don't know, 2016 to a room full of 10 people, and you see that they're playing like main stage download, something like that. I think collectively the UK just feels really proud of like, oh my God, it's like happening for you, and everybody feels like really supportive of each other. I think the support in the UK is really genuine, and like needed as well. Like I think everybody spurs each other on, and I think that's a really healthy thing that the UK does really, really right. Everybody knows everybody. Of course, it is like a small place to live in, like contextually, I guess, like in comparison to somewhere like America. So everybody does know everybody, and like, yeah, just I think the support and the willingness for our scene to do well is like a driving factor behind it.
Yeah, definitely very tight-knit little community. You can see that for
Yeah.
sure. But Alicia, I could see you're grinning.
Yes.
I think I know why.
I always get so giddy at this part because I can't wait. We have a segment on our show, Deb, which is called the Jawdropping segment. It's almost like a little quick fire where we have 4 questions just pertaining to your career, everything you've experienced, where we run over some of the most jaw-dropping moments that you have gone through. So first up, it is, what is the most jaw-dropping experience you've ever had at a show? And this can be one of your own shows that you've performed at or one you've attended over the years. I love the look away. You're deep in thought. It's so sweet.
I know. Like I think jaw-dropping experience. Oh my God.
Could be something crazy that's happened at a show, good or bad way.
Yeah.
However you want to take it.
So a time recently when I was like really shocked was like in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago. There was like a pit and somebody literally like knelt down and like it was coming up to the breakdown, and he just looked at me and he was like, pew, for the actual bit that it like went into the breakdown. And it was so funny. Like I was I was belly laughing and just completely missed the cue. And this guy was kind of like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's insane. Like, why has nobody done this before? That is amazing. I think that really threw me off as like maybe not as like interesting, but
no, that's hilarious.
Yeah, like it really made me laugh. And Harry Steele, who does photos with us, he sent me like the video. I don't know how he'd got it, but he was like, oh my God, I found the bit like of the bloke. So I really laughed about that yesterday morning.
That is so good. I mean, just a testament to how like the audience interaction, and when it is maybe like just a small but really packed show, how that interaction can totally impact the energy on stage too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was like a really good one. I'm trying to think of like moments that I've been at where I was like, oh my God, this is insane. I feel like all of them sound really like not that jaw-dropping actually.
Thing is though, I feel like
the head is like A Day to Remember at Download one year, like chucking loads of loo roll, and I think I was quite young and I was like, oh my God, they're chucking loo roll into the crowd, oh my God. And then there was like the crowd surf on top of somebody else crowd surfing, and I was like, they can't do that, oh my God.
You know, it's so funny because I've seen A Day to Remember too, when they also threw toilet paper in the crowd at my show, and I just remember thinking, toilet paper is expensive. I'm taking some of this.
Yeah. I know. That's how I'd probably react now as an adult, but at the time I was like, toilet paper. Oh my God. Now I'd be probably worried about the expense, but yeah,
it's a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the next one we have here is the most jaw-dropping misstep early in your career and the lesson that you learned from it.
Oh God. Misstep is in like a mistake.
Could be a mistake or just something where you're like, oh, I would have done that differently in hindsight.
Oh God, like so much of it. Oh God, all the coming back to me.
Is it all just flooding back into your mind right now?
Oh, I can see it's gonna be a good story. Please tell it, please.
There is one from, I don't even want to say what band it was, but it's a band.
You don't have to say what
anonymous.
It was a band that I really liked, and it was in my old band, and we didn't like, it was a sold out show, and that was like a huge thing for us, and I really, really liked this band. And the bassist I got on with really well, and we all hung out after the show, and he was like, oh, I'd like you to play in this like side project thing that I'm working on. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm really, really stoked for that. And then like as we were leaving, there was loads of people like at the like stage doors at the exit. And like obviously he'd give me his number because he didn't have Instagram or something like that. Like, and as I'd left, I was like, yeah, make sure to text me. Make sure to text me. And I just looked. It didn't look how the situation was, because there was so many people. And when I mean everybody turned and looked at me, I mean everybody turned and looked at me. And then he didn't actually text me for a good while about this side project. For like literally a year, and then he was like, do you still want to do the side projects? But for that entire year I was like, oh, I just looked so uncool. And that was an unfortunate phrase to the back doors of a venue, but maybe that's more in my head than what's true. But yeah,
that's the thing though about being a girl in the music industry.
Yeah, it's not even a mistake.
We're all thinking about it.
No, and that's the thing. It's not a mistake. It's something that you would say to anybody of yours, but it's just the way that we get pigeonholed into something. It's unfortunate, but quite literally, that's not even a misstep. That's just people needing a little tweaking on their perception.
Oh, it still keeps me up. But you are right.
It's true, because I was gonna say the exact same thing. I'm like, it's literally just that us as women feel like we have to be like acting a certain way so it doesn't get perceived as something that's not. But it's like, you're just being a professional, you know, and let them think what they want.
Yep.
Whoopsie
doopsie. Well, for this next one, Deb, who is the most jaw-dropping female artist that you'd eventually love to work with?
Oh, so many, so many. I think one of the people who I'm most in awe of is Becca McIntyre of Marmozets. Like, I think she is one of like the most badass queens. She's so talented. Like, her talent is immeasurable in my opinion. So she's like a real hero for me. Yeah, and I think maybe like Reba Mears of Code Orange is also a hero for me. I think she's amazing and so talented as well. But if I was being like sincere, it would be Becca McIntyre, just because I remember like going to see their shows when I was younger and realizing that what she portrayed just seemed to be who she was. Like, she didn't seem to feel the pressure of like being a lady in the music industry, which I'd always felt, and I guess sometimes when I was younger I'd felt as though even if I did do it, I'd have to conform to like certain guidelines. And she was somebody who I felt as though showed people that you can just be authentic. So yeah, she's a hero.
Yeah, so good. And the last one we have here is the most jaw-dropping misconception about you or about Heriot that you wish people understood.
Oh God. I think a lot of people think that like I think a lot of people, even people like in bands, think that like our bands are the job now. Like, and I think that's a real struggle in like trying to convey to people that like we are really grinding without wanting to talk about that too much, because it can seem a bit irritating to talk about, because nobody forces you to be in a band and you grind like for the love of it and you want to put yourself in that position. But I think some people think that like the band is all we concentrate on now, and like we all still have full-time jobs. So it's literally as soon as we come back off tour, we're straight back at work. Like as soon as we come back from work, it's like band stuff every day, like, and during the day. And I think some people think that we have it easy sometimes, like I can and not that we don't have it easy, like we're so grateful to be in this position. I just think I'd like people to see like how it really is for people in bands, and not just Heriot. Like you have to really want it to be able to sustain like this way of working. I can't think of anything like cool to say, really. Like I'd like to think what you see is what you get. I can't think of anything about myself in particular to say like, oh, everybody thinks that Deb's not like this, but really I'm like that. I can't. I think I'm quite an open book. But yeah, I think I'd like for people to see, if people were a fly on the wall, I think maybe it would, outwardly it looks quite differently to what it is internally within a band. Not that that is a problem, I think, at all. I think it would just be eye-opening for people to see, like,
Yeah, I mean,
it is other bands as well.
It is an absolute beast to turn a project that you love as a band and turn it into a business, and then also having to juggle a full-time job. I'm actually really glad you brought this up, because I know so many artists, probably many that we've spoken to, experience the same thing that you do. So I'd love to kind of turn this onto its head as something really positive here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fans who want to help support Heriot to become your full-time thing, what do you think is the best way that they can contribute to your passion and be supportive?
My head went, give me your money.
I mean,
I don't mean that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Here's my Cash App.
Venmo.
I think buying our merch is the single most impactful way to help any band, not just Heriot. That is the way that we get most of the money from that sale, and especially on Bandcamp Friday. So Heriot still have a Bandcamp and still use Bandcamp, but when it's Bandcamp Friday, we don't pay any fees. So that is the most helpful day to help us on, if anybody would like to. And not to I always feel a little bit bad after I talk about like band politic kind of stuff, because I am so lucky to be in a band and it's completely my choice to be able to do this.
Totally,
So
yeah.
I don't want anybody listening to think that I am acting as though I'm doing like a bloody like public service to be in a band. Like I'm very aware of it. It's my choice.
No, fully. But it's the same token. We all want to support musicians, and you know, anyone who loves what you do. It's like, it's almost like not our duty as fans, but it's just good to have an understanding of how the business works and how we can be the most helpful to you all. So that's great information to have, you know, because the industry has changed a lot, so it matters more than ever.
It really does. Well, on that note, we just want to say thank you, Deb, for taking the time and coming on here to chill with us on today's episode. You are lovely, if we haven't told you enough. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for having me, both of you. Like I seriously appreciate you having me on, and I really am a fan of the podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Anytime, it is our pleasure. Yeah, slam dunk, let's go. See you there. And everybody watching, if you want to see more of us beyond this weekend and more, here on Knotfest is where you can catch all of the latest episodes. So do leave us a review, a comment, a like, whatever you got. We appreciate it, and keep tuning into She's of the Band. On behalf of my co-host Alicia Atout, I've been Tori Kravitz, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.